We are excited once again to have a baseball dad on our program, Mark Lodergan. Mark's going to talk a little bit about the process of having a son that's interested in pursuing baseball beyond just the youth leagues. And we are once again talking about Walter Beede and kind of his expertise and what he brings to the table for these families. So, Mark, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Great. Well, we basically start off with just a quick introduction, learn a little bit about you. And really the goal of this episode is one, to understand kind of the process in which you had to go through, talking to you prior to this, maybe some of the struggles and your upbringing of really not understanding the world of baseball. And for those that are in it, I ask you to go back to the day that you didn't know anything about baseball and go, wow, the things that we've learned, this is a pretty complicated journey that we go on, but we do it, and we do it for the love of the game, and we do it for the love of our kids. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead, do a quick introduction, give us kind of a background, your son Cole, kind of his awakening to the game, and then we'll end with kind of where you're at today and what the next steps are.
Sure. So I'm different than most of your guests in that I'm not a former player. I'm not a coach. I'm just a dad. And like I was saying in the pre-show, I didn't play growing up. My sport was swimming. And I joke with my son often, I did not even feel the full effects of gravity. Okay. I was floating in the water. My feet weren't on the ground. I didn't have to figure out how to organize my body and do all these crazy things you do on the baseball field. I wasn't reading hops and timing with the pitcher and, reading cues and all of this stuff that goes on. It was just me in the water. And, professionally, my background is I got an MED with a focus in adult education. In 2015, I've been working in corporate training for about 12 years now. And I share that because I got really into Anders Ericsson and the 10,000 hour rule that was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, and this idea of expert coaching and deliberate practice. And this is how we get people better at things. And I think that was actually to the detriment of my son and his early experience in baseball, that I came at play and playing a sport from an adult learning corporate training kind of perspective.
That can be overwhelming.
Yeah. It can be really overwhelming.
Yeah, I just want to play.
Yeah. And because I learned the sport as he learned the sport. And I'd sit there and watch practice, would drop him off the field. My daughter and I would hang around and walk around the park, and I'd just keep an ear out or, watch what they were doing because I wanted to learn what was going on. Right. And I'd go home and watch these YouTube videos to try to learn more about the sport, and started taking this approach with my son of, let's try to find you a coach to do this. Let's try to find you a coach to do that, to teach these different skills that you need to know, as opposed to just going out and having fun and playing with his peers.
You brought up your background, and although it may have been a detriment initially, I think the positive side that came out is you understood the value of finding someone that actually knows what they're talking about and is looking out for the best interest of whomever that may be, right? There's a lot of corporate trainers, and there's a lot of ways of doing things. I think similarly in the baseball world, there's a whole lot of coaches. There's a lot of former players that have their own idea of what it takes to make it to that next level once your son decides that they want to do this. So with that being said, talk about kind of that first steps, right? You and your daughter walking around trying to understand the game. You're watching YouTube channels. You're and it's got to be a little overwhelming for people that are in the sport. They kind of know how to navigate it. Someone that's just coming in for the very first time, boy, it is overwhelming. What's good? What's not good? Why is this a successful way of doing it? Why is this not? Talk a bit about, expand a little bit more on that initial journey with your son, and also talk about what he was experiencing as well from his own perspective.
Yeah. So the first couple of years, it was just typical Little League, show up to Farm League, you have the tiny little field, the last game they let the kids pitch. He was thrilled with it and said, yeah, I want to do this next year. So then he was 8, he's in minors, it's kid pitch, and he could not hit a thing. Could not hit a ball to save his life, did not care. He was having so much fun. And the very final game of that season, when he was 8 years old, he made contact, and we were walking back to the car. He said, Dad, did you see how hard I fouled that? And that was it. He was hooked. Great. He finally connected a bat with a ball, and he was hooked. So that following off season, we have a facility in town that does baseball training. So I got him some private lessons there. They run clinics. I put him in those. So now here he is. Little League changed the format from AAA to minors. So now here he is in minors, and it took some time. But he finally started hitting. He was having fun fielding. He just had a better understanding of the concepts of the game. Had some great coaches from the dads in town. He ended up making the all-star team. And his coach even said in the nomination, it's because he was hit by pitches 5 times and just kept on staying in the batter's box and kept on swinging. And said, if we are valuing what really matters in this sport, let's give this kid a shot at the all-star team. And I'll say that's when my perspective on it shifted, because he was starting to achieve the things he wanted to in the sport, even though he was only 9. But I mean, as I'm sure you know, as a parent, when it's your first one, sometimes you can lose perspective. Right. And I say this to Cole, listen, you're the one I make all the mistakes on. Your sister has a much better deal here. And he'll just nod and say, yeah, she does. So I got caught up in the, is my kid getting a hit this game? Is he making fielding errors, or is he making throwing errors? It's a really competitive baseball town that we're in. And so there's the parents at the dugout talking in between at bats and things like that. And you start seeing that, the kids who are seeing progress or performing in the games are the ones where the parents go over and talk and have a little chat with their kids. So I start doing that too. And I start being the sideline coach and making those mistakes. And it was around, so a couple years go by, again, had some success, loved the sport, but was the scrappy athletic kid. Baseball didn't come naturally to him. Some kids pick up a bat and it just makes sense. They put a glove on their hand, it just makes sense. And, I think Cole got by on this effort, athleticism, and especially in the Northeast, we're not big on travel ball. It's not a big perfect game area. You don't have the tournaments up here. There are some travel ball leagues. You have AAU, you have Select League up here in Massachusetts, but it's not the same environment you have elsewhere in the country where people are getting into travel ball really young. So we started travel at 11, did travel again at 12. And it was that year in between 11 and 12 when I met Walter. I actually heard him on a podcast talking about this thing, the process. And for somebody like me, again, corporate training background, I'm like, oh, here it is. Yep. Here's the secret. Here's the key. This is the guy I've been looking for. And he was nice enough to meet with Cole, have a nice video chat, getting to know him. Started giving some feedback, went on things like his tee work, some drills he could do to work on connection, starting things like wall ball, hey, send me some video of what he looks like taking infield and outfield, stuff like that. And what Walter saw before I realized it is that I was putting this enormous performance pressure on Cole, in this desire to help him, in this desire for Cole to see the outcomes he wanted to see in baseball. I was putting this enormous pressure on him of, let's take video every at bat and show it to you after the game. Let's take video of infield, outfield and show it to you after the game. And the feedback from Walter changed from feedback on how he looked to like, hey, how'd the game go, buddy? Right. You know, you have fun today? And like, my hamster might be a little bit slow on the wheel sometimes, but I picked up on it.
Yeah.
Right. I picked up on what he was saying and what he's doing. And it was, oh, I'm putting way too much pressure on this kid. And it was so much that in Little League, he had been mashing the ball as much as a Little Leaguer can. In travel ball, he went, 10 games without a hit.
Yep.
Which is an eternity for a kid.
Right. Hey, as we continue here, we're with baseball dad Mark Lodergan talking about Cole and his relationship with Walter Beede. I love this, and for players and parents, specifically younger parents or younger parents with younger players, this is such a great topic. Mark, I really appreciate you sharing some of the vulnerabilities of really understanding the game. And I think that people will, as they watch this, they are going to relate. This is not a unique perspective of a parent that is getting involved in this game. There's very little information out there of how to be the right mom and dad for your kid in this ultra competitive sport. Very little development, very little ability to understand what makes a good player. And so you were bringing up Walter and getting to know the process. One of the things, one quick comment, you read the book, obviously. I love his perspective of being a baseball dad and doing all of the things that all of us make, all the mistakes that we all make, right? You just mentioned that you went and found that you were the sideline coach and talking about things with the parents. I want you to, before we get into 11, 12, talk a bit about that. What was that experience? I mean, you coming in this is all new, and then you see a bunch of things going on, and now you start kind of participating in it, and you said doing the wrong things. I thought that was good. I want you to talk about kind of what that means.
Oh, doing the wrong things. That's a good question. So, I mean, I distinctly remember this moment on the sidelines when he was 9U or 10U in an all-star game and seeing other parents going up to the fence in the dugout and thinking, oh, I guess this is what we're supposed to do. Literally every other parent is doing it. I guess this is what we're supposed to do. And this is how we help make our kids better. Which is not how we make our kids better at anything. They don't need the confusion of, do I listen to my coach? Do I listen to my parent? What's going on here? Anytime a play goes on, I'm hearing, I don't know, a dozen voices shout at me. Right.
And saying all different things, possibly.
And saying all different things, possibly. You know, go watch a Little League game. You know, Walter talks about this so many times. You know, when he wants to work with somebody, it's take your phone out and just record. Doesn't even need to be video. Just record what goes on at a game. And I think parents can do this even without recording. Just sit back. Give yourself one game to just sit back and not say anything and listen to it. And listen from the perspective of being a kid and what that must be like to have, you know, you have your first base coach saying something. You have, you know, there might be a coach in the dugout. There might be a third base coach. Your teammates are all shouting what the cutoff is or what the play is. And then you have all these parents in the crowd saying things as well. And how do you process that as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kid? It's understandable why kids freeze out there on the field.
Yep. Well, no, and then you said go 10 games without a hit. Then now add that level of pressure. You've already got the pressure. That's the thing about baseball, right? The pressure is already on. You know what you need to do. and then you're adding all of this level.
Yep.
So I think that was a great perspective. And I thank you for sharing that with us. So we're 11, 12 years old. You're now talking with Walter. He's starting to kind of give you some perspective of kind of, you're probably hearing this and going, whoa, there's some things that I probably need to start adjusting a bit. So talk a bit that from a dad's perspective.
Sure. So, Walter actually set aside time to have a phone call with Cole after his season is over. He actually, in Little League, had his best season ever that year and didn't make the All-Star team. And this crushed him. This absolutely crushed him. Especially because 12, it's the last year you're in Little League. This is your chance to play for Williamsport. And no matter how outlandish that dream might be, 12-year-old baseball players have this dream, right? So, Walt talks about giving childhood back to children. That's one of his main drivers, his main motivations for doing what he does, whether that's, talking with a parent of a 9-year-old player or, me with Cole or working with a high school student. It's let's give childhood back to children and let's let kids enjoy the game. So he hopped on the phone with Cole and was like, hey, who's your favorite player? And he knew the answer already. He had talked with Cole before. It's Ronald Acuna Jr. Even though we're in Red Sox country, it's Acuna. And he said, Ronald Acuna Jr. did not take hitting lessons. Acuna hit bottle caps. He tossed up bottle caps and hit them. And he went on to talk to Cole about just do self-toss, right? Here's what I want you to do this summer. It's just do self-toss. And they got off the phone and Cole looked at me and said, Dad, do you have a broomstick I can cut? I had not seen him like that in months. He was so excited. And I just took a handle off of one of our rakes and cut it, and I said, he needs to own this. So I said, here's some hand tools. Here's what you do. Here's some sandpaper, smooth it out. And I just left the deck. I said, all right, I'm going to trust the process. And for parents, the process is walk away, right? Let me find the direction you need to go, maybe because you're a kid, and I'll help point you in that direction. But then it's your job to walk there. And what do you know? He made his broomstick bat, and he spent that entire summer just hitting wiffle balls in the backyard and figuring out how to be a hitter. And you're going to find I answer with stories a lot. I just think that story says so much about how we can give the sport back to our kids by taking it out of the structured environment and letting them find their own way. He figured out how to hit by tossing a ball up and trying to hit a hard line drive into the woods.
You didn't go buy him a $400 bat?
I didn't. I did not.
Big Papi, that's what his story was. Well, I always use that story. I didn't know he. Obviously, there's a lot of players that come out from the islands and the Latin America. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a lot of those things, and they had to learn through necessity. And there's something to be said about that. Bottle caps with a wood broomstick. You can hit that. You can hit a big. The ball becomes really, really big, and the bat becomes this sledgehammer, and your perspective completely changes. What a great story as far as giving that back and the control back to the player, finding the fun again. Talk about now. Now it's 12U. Now he's done with that. Found that passion again. I think that's the way you kind of you laid that out. What were the next few years? Go through kind of Walter's relationship, and then also the kind of the progression of Cole.
Okay, so something I had done before even meeting Walter was get Cole involved with strength training. The club he was playing for just sent us, email blast. Hey, there's this performance training center we work with. We highly recommend it for kids. Like I said, I was a high school athlete. I'm part of the 90% who never did anything else. But, high school athlete, I've tried to stay active throughout my life. And I really want to pass it on to both my kids, my son and my daughter. And I thought, all right, let's do this. This is really cool. You'll get a trainer. So he started training about a week before he turned 12 that fall. So by the time Walter had this conversation with Cole, Cole had been in strength training for, let's say, 8 or 9 months. One of the things Walter really emphasizes is you're not just focusing on now. It's like, do the things that are going to prepare you to be the baseball player you want to be. And for youth players, that means getting strong, because that change to the big field is coming. Like I said, I work in training. I think about things from this geeky training perspective. I like to think I'm a special kind of stupid where I need to read a research paper to understand something. When we think about constraints-based learning, where it's like you have your task, your environment, and your individual, all right, the environment is going to change. Right. And we can't change that. We're going from 45-60 to 60-90.
Big change.
Right? Big change. And so what do we need to do? We need to change the individual to be able to be ready for that change in environment. Right? So can I name drop somebody? Because
Sure.
it was really good. All right. So he had been working with a trainer named Tyler Kessler, who's with Alpine Gym in Framingham, Massachusetts. Big plug for Tyler. He was awesome. We ended up switching to Cressy Performance in Hudson, Mass, just because it's closer. Tyler is fantastic and gave Cole the foundation that allowed him to go to Cressy and hit the ground running, and just continue on with his training. So there was that first 10 months or so with Tyler, and then Cole started at Cressy Performance.
That's with Eric Cressy. Yeah, and
Yes.
another plug, Eric Cressy. I just released the podcast with Walter and Tyler Beede, interviewing Eric Cressy with Cressy Sports. So yeah, the great plug.
Yeah, and that environment has been so good. So Cole has been training with Cressy Sports Performance in Massachusetts since August of 2022. All right, and for a long time that was his only formal instruction, if you want to call it that. Go to the gym 3 days a week, get bigger, faster, stronger. What Walt does with his athletes is, hey, just, check in once a week, do a weigh-in, let me know how it's going. And some parents might be a little hesitant about that idea of a weigh-in. I think when you get into that topic area, people can get sensitive and worry, whether it be with male or female athletes, the idea of having a body image issue around that. All Walt wants people to understand is you are growing and you're training. And we just want to make sure you're eating enough to support that. And the easiest way to figure that out is that number on the scale. And that's all it is, right? And Cole's a really driven kid. He took to this idea of he loves the gym. He's with baseball guys at the gym, and Cole is a baseball guy. It's, they have trivia Tuesdays. They're quizzing each other on the immaculate grid every day he goes in. They're competing over who has the longest streak on the grid. They're, even when it's not trivia Tuesday, they're trying to stump each other. It's just such a wonderful environment for him to grow. And you referenced the podcast last night. I watched the stream on YouTube, and they're talking about at what age as a parent, do you step away and just let your kid have their practice time, have their strength and conditioning time? When I reached out to Pete at Cressy, I said, listen, I'm a recovering helicopter parent, so how do you like this to go? And he said, you know what? Be in the room for the assessment so you know how it goes. You can watch the first workout if you want. After that, they can be in the gym on their own. And I really consider the gym like that's Cole's space. That is his sacred space. I do not go on the gym floor.
Great lesson for all moms and dads.
Yes,
it's good for you.
Don't
get
me wrong,
you, and it's good for the kid. That is. Think of it both ways, right? It's good for both parties involved.
Yeah, and by doing these simple things, he was ready for the big field. Cole was 4'9", 72 pounds, his 11U travel ball year. He just happened to have his annual physical right at the start of the travel ball season, right? So I remember this vividly. 4'9", 72 pounds. Like the bat was swinging him. It's a drop 10 USA bat and the bat swinging him. And right now, 2.5 years later, or however, he's 5'5.5", 161 pounds. The other week, he had a deadlift PR of 270 for 5 reps. He just turned 14 in October.
That's great.
A safety bar squat of 190 for 4 reps. He's getting strong in a really safe way with great mentors around him. I think one of the things we have to do as parents is find the people who can guide our kids. And this was one of the biggest things that Walter reminded me of, is just my own childhood experience. It wasn't all mom and dad. I was in Boy Scouts. I was on the swim team. A lot of the guys from my Boy Scout troop were on the swim team. I got to have that mentorship from older guys, see how they carry themselves, see how they approach practice, see how they approach training, see how they approach leadership. And if we really want to set our kids up for success, I think we need to do that, because they're going to listen to their peers and their trainers and their coaches at a certain age a lot more than they listen to us.
And finding a positive peer pressure environment, right? That's one thing I am a huge sports fan from that perspective, even if it just gets them through high school, because of the habits that you form. The commitments that you make, those are things that can be the positive peer pressure of doing those things. And then also seeing, when you look at dad, that's so far away. And when you see somebody that's 16 or 17 and you're 13 and 14, you can start visualizing that that's going to be me in a few years. A little bit different, right? And I think that's the real positive. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny because one of the high schoolers who trains at Cressy was the I guess you call him player assistant in the dugout on Cole's 12U travel ball year. This program sends all their other guys to Cressy, and so he saw this kid deadlift 385. Almost ran out of the gym, and when his workout was over, like, oh my God, Dad. So-and-so deadlifted 385 today. And then it's, so-and-so committed to this Division II school in the area, and he's throwing, 85 right now. And like you said, that seems more realistic and attainable. When you're talking about somebody who's only 3 or 4 years older than you, you can see it. You can see if I stay the course and I have a routine and I'm dedicated to my routine, I will get better as a function of that. It's awesome because, there's so much childhood psychology that's involved as well. And so one thing I love about baseball is, again, I said this earlier on, the microcosm of life. When I talk to coaches and they talk about finding a fit and caring about the individual and finding what they want to do, baseball is just a part. Baseball is a conduit to do other things. And it's when there's challenges and when there's difficulties, keeping it fun is what's going to keep the kids in it. When you're hitting some of those objectives and those goals is what keeps driving them forward and doing better. So finding that, one, kudos to you and your, to raising a son that has some of those drive. You're not just born with that. That's something that they see. That's something that they learn. That's in my opinion. But then second is really being able to step back. And I think that's what we're coming up on 30 minutes here. You've made as many or more changes than Cole has. Cole is just living life, right? Yeah. It's really the parents that are having to go through this transition and to trust the process. Back to what Walter talks about. Trusting that process is a letting go moment. And so talk about that a bit and where it is, where it's brought you
And then what's the next steps as Cole is kind of reaching into the high school years now, finding his place and developing potentially additional skills in the area of life.
So I'll try to talk short because I typically talk long. So when you talk about letting go, you need to know what your kid's goals in the sport are. Right. And like Cole has said, he has this MLB dream still. And this is something he's said since he was 9 years old. And just a little context for our family. We lost their mom, my late wife, to cancer 8 years ago. So there's a little dead mom guilt in here. This is how I put it. And it's kind of gallows humor, right? I want to find all the resources I can to set him up to be able to reach his goals if that's what he wants. But then I need to step away because you cannot make somebody want to work that hard.
Absolutely.
And for parents like me who did not grow up in baseball, all right, I want you to think back to whatever sport you played or whatever sport you watched as a kid and think about the best person in your high school who ever did it and what level of college sports they got to. And in my case, and Walter didn't explicitly tell me to do this, this is like through paying attention to what he's doing, I did this on my own. And there's a boy ahead of me in high school, year ahead, who got an appointment to West Point and ended up swimming there. And one of our races, one of our dual meets, he ended up swimming against a kid who committed to Florida State. And let me tell you, when they dove in the pool and swam 500 yards of freestyle, their splits on the 500, their 100-yard splits were faster than the state qualifying time for the 100-yard sprint.
Wow.
That's how good a Division I athlete is. Right? And it's easier to see when it's a sport like swimming or track where it's metric-based like that. You can't make a kid want to work that hard to be that good at a sport. So just accept that and step away. And I think that's what we need to do as parents. Find the resources that will allow our kids to achieve that goal, but then we just step away.
That's
good. Because it's going to be up to them. Now, I help out with, like, here's what it looks like to plan out your time. Let's get a day planner. We can help with those executive functioning kind of skills and the daily routine. Let me teach you how to cook. Right. So when you're coming home from school, you're making a healthy snack for yourself, or, you're getting up on a Saturday morning, you're making a good breakfast for yourself, things like that. That's the role of a parent, right? Let the coaches take care of coaching.
This is great.
Let the strength trainers take care of the strength training. And I will help with the skills I'll help with the life skills that apply to anything. And it's also being really deliberate with language. This is, again, something I think about as a trainer. Like, it's not what did you do to make yourself better as a baseball player today? It's, do you have the baseball skills you want? Externalize it, right? If we keep it external as something they're trying to achieve, something they're trying to do, it's not something they're becoming. So whenever the game ends for them, we're changing that perspective already. We've already created that perspective for however many years it is that they're a person who likes to play baseball. They're a person who also likes geography trivia, because he does. They're a person who, has fun in science class and doing all the different experiments, right? Let's do all these different things. Baseball is one.
So, Mark, when are you going to write the foreword to Walter's next book?
Let's see. So I think what is the one that he did on parenting? Beyond the Bleachers? I wrote the.
Oh, well, I'm sitting here listening to this going, we have a new podcast. It's called Parenting 101, and also baseball.
And also baseball. But, and this is why I'm so glad you invited me on, because this is all the stuff I talk about with other baseball dads, and we talk about with each other. And, I talk about it with my girlfriend, and she thinks I'm crazy. But it's, let's try to parent deliberately.
Absolutely. Now, you know what? This is so good, because I always enjoy when we get into the life conversations when I'm talking to head coaches, right? There's head coaches that want to talk about the stats. They want to talk about the drills. They want to talk about the scheduling. They want to talk about the game, which is great. I love the game. And there's other coaches that want to talk about life skills, putting the kid in the right position to succeed, no matter what that is. And you know what? You can see it. You said it, parenting deliberately, but also it's coaching deliberately. It's training deliberately, because there's going to be, the great thing about baseball is it teaches kids to fail very early in life. And if you don't have those other skills, failure is very difficult. And you need those to pick yourself up and keep going. Baseball is a perfect avenue to learn to fail and what are you going to do when you go 10 games without getting a hit? You better have other areas to draw from, because if it's getting a hit is your identity, then the game's not for you, or you have lost or not learned a life lesson that's very, very important. Mark, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you, to hear about Cole's journey, and certainly what Walter has brought to the table in this. I think in this situation, it was more of a pointing you in the right direction more than anything. You had some of the skills being a trainer. Boy, what you're bringing up is all things that are pretty basic, but a lot of people don't know it, right? And I think that's the key to life. It's not complicated, but it is.
I mean, it's, I had a boss one time that said, sounds easy, does hard.
Yep. It sounds easy. Trust me. I'm going through my second group of kids. I have two daughters that are both graduated and on their own, living in different cities. And we adopted two boys a few years ago. And so now I'm doing it all again with boys. And your message of deliberate parenting is absolutely the case. I don't think it's the fact knowing it already and then deliberately doing it are two different things. And it's some great pointers that you're bringing. You've added so much value. There's such good clips here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and talk to you. Thank you, sir.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right, don't go